Understanding and avoiding these errors will help you improve your skills and create beautiful watercolor paintings. And the second, which I will reveal to you at the end of the video, is the most important. Let's get to the point. Mistakes do not exist. First mistake is believing that they do. This belief that there are mistakes you need to avoid is very limiting and can block you, preventing you from letting go and freeing yourself in watercolor. So get it out of your head right now. Thomas Alva Edison said, "I didn't fail, I just discovered 999 ways not to make a light bulb." In fact, that's why I always tell my students to repeat things 1,000 times, because it's at 1,000 that we will see results, not before. So, if mistakes do not exist in watercolor, what does exist? Learning, evolution, and experimentation with the medium, which will help you improve and find your own path in watercolor. That is to say, with this, you will develop your own style, which is unique and no one else has. And for that, obviously, you will have to learn from your favorite teachers, see what they do, imitate them, and from there gain confidence to develop your style. And that doesn't happen overnight. It requires commitment and hours of dedication. Of course, dear little witches, magic doesn't happen by magic, and to be redundant, it requires a minimum of consistency. Look, we are talking about art, not mathematics. We know that 2 + 2 is 4, but in art things don't work exactly that way, right? Come on, there are things that some people might consider a mistake, for example, cauliflowers. Not this cauliflower. Not this one. If you are at least somewhat familiar with watercolor, you have probably already heard about cauliflowers. Well, these cauliflowers, which many might consider a mistake, are used intentionally by some artists to achieve specific effects. And by the way, incredible effects are achieved. For example, the artist André Penovac, known for his beautiful cats, sometimes uses cauliflowers with beautiful effects. Look, of course it is important to work with good materials, and on my channel I always help you with this topic. You will see, the quality is noticeable and helps a lot. I myself, for example, have brushes that cost around $60 because I am professionally dedicated to watercolor, and I also love researching these types of materials, brushes, and sharing it with you on this channel. For example, this is a natural squirrel hair wash brush, and of course it holds a lot of water, is super soft. Why am I telling you this? Well, because as a great watercolor master, Amit Kapoor, told me, an artist can create works with any material placed in front of them. Of course, it is good that materials help us, but the creativity and magic come from within you, not from them. And maybe some of you cannot afford to pay for expensive materials, so know that this does not have to be a barrier. What we will do then is adapt to the materials we have, those available to us at that moment, and make the most of their potential. In fact, let me tell you, this is also a way to enhance your creativity. Although, well, I will tell you one thing, at least keep in mind that the paper you use should have a minimum weight, since we work with water and obviously we are not going to use regular paper, the soft paper like these here, right? It would all crumple and wouldn't be of any use to us. For professionals, the ideal would be for the paper to have at least 300 G. And if you are a beginner, don't obsess if you are using a little less weight. Another dilemma you might have is the use of white and black. Obviously, it's a great resource to use the white of the paper to create highlights and specific reserves, but what do we do with the color white? Well, many purists believe that it shouldn't be used, but currently, in reality, many artists use it on specific occasions. Of course, it's not a color that is used all the time and in large quantities. For example, many painters use Chinese white, or like me, I use titanium white to add touches of light or to give consistency to the light values in certain specific areas. 100 Chungwei, for example, uses titanium white just like I do, and Joseph's Book B uses Chinese white. And even the famous artist William Turner used white in many of his watercolors. Look, and most of us don't have black in the palette, but we must keep in mind that we can find it as an ingredient in some specific colors, such as Payne's Gray or in neutral ink. These are colors that I have, but a few months ago I made the decision not to use them. And what I do when I want to darken is to do it with complementary colors, which is a bit more common. And in case I want a super dark tone, I like to add it with Van Dyke Brown, a tone that gives more warmth to the watercolor, and well, I quite like it. Another very important topic is water control, humidity control. You don't have to be afraid thinking that if you take too much water, you will soak the paper, or that on the contrary, if you take too little water, the texture of the paper will show and it will look bad. And oh, what a mistake. Well, no, I want you to be clear that this is a matter of experimenting. Sometimes you will have puddles, other times you will go with little water, and you will have to take more. And as you experiment with this topic of humidity and water, that's where you will gain mastery, and you will say, well, now if I do this, I know this will happen. If I do the other, then this other thing will happen. and without experience and experimentation, you wouldn't be able to achieve this. And if you are afraid to experiment, then you will take longer. You will take longer to learn the technique. The point is to experiment with water to master all the techniques and thus be able to use the one that suits us best at each moment. Do you understand, right? Well, just make a lot of puddles. On the other hand, there are also logical things that you will start to see or that you can notice yourself. For example, if you are going to paint on a small piece of paper, you are not going to use large wash brushes or flat brushes. Or if you are going to paint on a very large paper and you have to cover a very large surface like the sky, you are not going to use a small brush for details, right? With that, I just wanted to say that even if you are a beginner, there are logical things that you can start to notice. And now a question, if you are a very experienced watercolorist, what would you have to say regarding this point? Well, you would have to say, if you give me a large paper and a small brush, I can create a work of art. Of course, I like it. Are you getting the idea, right? Another thing to consider is the issue of long or short brush strokes. You will have to use one technique or another depending on the section or element you are painting. One thing that often happens to beginners who are not so beginner is that when the moment comes to make a long and fearless brush stroke, they fall short both in pigment and in the length of the brush stroke. For example, in skies or base gradients is where we need to master this. Be careful. Regarding the pencil, if you are going to make a preliminary drawing to position elements, in case the subject you are going to create is complex, you need to consider a few things. It is better to use a pencil that is not too soft, because otherwise it is very easy that later, when applying water on top, the graphite will dissolve and stain the paper. What I usually use is a lead pencil, which is of hardness B. But be careful, here again we will see how creativity flourishes. As a curiosity, if you are one of those people who worry a lot about whether in the final watercolor there is pencil line that shows through the watercolor, you can see a little of the pencil and the watercolor is no longer useful, well, you should know that I had the pleasure of visiting the studio of an artist named Pericoy, who is from the Moors, who used, pay attention, a black marker to make the base drawing and then painted over it with watercolors. Of course, he invented a whole system so that by cutting the marker he could make strokes as if it were a pencil, right? More defined strokes and others more broken, giving the line more expressiveness. So, is it a mistake for any pencil stroke to be visible in the final watercolor? Well, there are artists who may be interested in enhancing this effect, like in the case I told you about, and using it as another artistic resource. And you will see in some of my watercolors and in those of other artists, it can often be seen that there is some pencil stroke, and it's okay, it's natural, it's an artistic thing, it's not bad, it's not bad. Well then, when you understand that there is no mistake and you start developing your learning, you will gain maturity in your artistic technical development. Obviously, the methods that one artist uses do not have to be the same for another. As it is often said, every master has his own book. Besides, who is anyone to tell you that you are making a mistake? You can have a teacher whom you inspire from because you like their way of painting and can advise you. For example, I myself on my channel will give you advice, I will show you how I paint, my tricks, my techniques, but in the end, you will have your own learning process and you will make your own decisions. By the way, subscribe and also activate the bell because we already know Mr. YouTube that if you don't have the bell, he doesn't always notify you of the videos, okay? And you could miss out on great content and it's free. Come on, hit the bell too. And here comes the second mistake. Well, it's a very important thing. I would say it's the most important, and that is not to trust yourself. This idea is quite linked to the previous one because when you get used to the idea and understand that there are no mistakes you can make, but rather a learning process, then you will automatically lose more fear and feel freer to take risks, motivate yourself, and trust yourself more. In this way, the learning process will be much faster, much easier, and much more fun. It is truly very important, and I repeat, trust in yourself, in your abilities. There is no one like you. You can bring unique value to art because we are all unique. And as you develop your technique and artistic maturity, that is, in what you excel and what you do differently from the rest, then no one can stop you. Here you will already have the path marked, and it will only be about continuing to evolve to infinity because learning never ends. I believe it is a very beautiful and fulfilling journey because on one hand, the act of painting is solitary and introspective, which I love, and on the other hand, it has the magic of being able to share it with others, exchanging ideas with other artists, creating community, or 1,000 things that can be done to share art. And that's why I'm here. I like both aspects of art. See you very soon. Bye.